You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for August 7th, 2020. It's not safe for work.
Coming to you live from the Cornfield Resistance, where it turns out that Joe Biden's arms are not too short to box with God. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Bluegal.
Hey, Driftglass.
Hey, Bluegal.
Okay, so this brings up a core question that I have.
Wow.
For you and for our listeners.
Jumping right into core questions. Okay.
Yeah, because Donald Trump said, you know, it would be bad for God.
Yes. Poor God.
That Joe Biden's going to hurt God.
Didn't say which God, though, did he? Nope. Nope.
Well, okay, so you're making a joke.
No, actually, I'm taking it quite seriously, and I think I know where you're going, but please continue.
Well, and I wrote this in our notes. Are we taking Donald Trump too seriously or not seriously enough?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that some of our listeners have written us about, which is, what do we do about things like Portland? Right. What do we do about things where he's actually deciding, as Ali Velshi said last night, he said, Black Lives Matter protesters are violent Marxist anarchists who burn down cities and must be dominated by police.
Right.
And then he sends out federal cops with no notification as to who they are. Mm-hmm. It's totally unconstitutional for him to do this. And as soon as they leave town, peace is restored. It's clearly a police riot.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly designed to
create
footage for ads.
Right. But to say that this is Joe Biden's America when it's actually live footage of Donald Trump's America.
Well, he's not talking to us, so we don't figure
Well, okay. So he's not talking to us. So do we take Donald Trump too seriously, or are we not taking him seriously enough?
I take him very seriously. I think deadly seriously. I think he's killed more Americans than any other president, mm-hmm. other than Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. And he's going to keep right on doing it. He's put children in cages. He's taken health care away from some people. He's trying to take it away from millions of people. He has violated the law. He has fucked up every institution he touches, and he's done it all quite on purpose. And he has gotten away with it because the entire Republican Party is rotten from the head down, because Republican voters are racist idiots and who go along with everything he says, and because he's packed the courts with people who will just look the other way if he does something horrible. Is it constitutional for him to give an address, a political address from the Oval Office or from the White House? No. Is he going to do it anyway? Sure. Because why? Because there's no cop on the beat dragging his sorry ass out of the White House and putting him in jail for breaking the law. And there never will be. Until he's out of office, all of these things will continue. I look at him grunting out, he's hurting God, guns, the Bible, and our energy, or whatever. You know, that sounds ridiculous, right? That sounds like, you know, but what is it? It's the lobotomized Cliff Notes version of what Republicans have been saying for 30 years. Mm-hmm. The party of God, guns, and gays still has God and guns and are still perfectly willing to pull those out. He just doesn't know how to push that button smoothly. He doesn't know how to.
And now there's a big concern within certain Republican ranks mm-hmm. that Donald Trump come out against transgender individuals because the evangelicals, they aren't getting everything they want from Donald Trump. And if you really want to solidify that, you got to hate transgender people.
Well, and I got done just literally moments before we started this, listening to the first few minutes of the Friday address from Bill Kristol on the Bulwark podcast, talking to Charlie Sykes, and they're wringing their hands over, oh my God, this is so beneath the office of the president. This sort of grunting out, ook, ook, God, ook, ook, guns. Yeah, but you are the party that mm-hmm. used mm-hmm. scaring the shit out of people over the godless, heathen, commie liberals, over scaring the shit out of the people that Barack Obama is going to kick down their door, the black guy's going to come for their guns. That's your party. You mm-hmm. built that party. And every election cycle, it's like I forget what it's called. Not Bodie's law. It's the computer Moore's law. Mm-hmm. Moore's law, where everything gets twice as fast and half as expensive every 2 years or every 18 months. every election cycle, Republicans get twice as stupid. So you don't need to have high-flown eloquence about the godlessness and the contempt with which the liberals hold Christianity and blah, 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 blah. You don't need Chris Hitchens style rhetoric to move the masses anymore. You can just go, ook, ook, God, ook, ook, Biden, bad, guns, and the morons will know what you're saying. So I take him very seriously. He has successfully tracked the devolution of the mental state of the Republican Party to about as low as you can get before you reach the level of cattle. But
and that brings to mind something I've said long before about John McCain's election and how, I saw in a restaurant, I knew John McCain was going to lose when I saw in a restaurant the waitress shame a customer. You're going to vote for McCain-Palin? Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
How embarrassing. And it's going to be a very interesting 100 days or less than 100 days when we look at over and over again these viral videos of people not wearing masks. And all of a sudden, the question is the average voter embarrassed to be associated with those people?
Yeah.
And we're going to have a longer conversation about the Trump voter and who identifies as a Trump voter. Already you're seeing Fox News talk about the secret Trump voter who's embarrassed to say so, but will go to the ballot box and vote for Trump.
We call them the imaginary Trump voters.
But imaginary Trump voter. But the question is, does the critical mass of voters that we need, and we need a landslide.
Yes, we do.
Say, oh, no, I'm not doing the N-word thing. Because that's not who I am. I will not identify with that. And no one's going to vote for Trump as a joke this time around.
No.
It's not a joke.
Well, there are enough people who are, dead enders of a certain campaign who are still adamant that Joe Biden is a corporatist fascist monster who is no worse than Donald Trump. And I will start. Now, these people are, relatively small in number, and that's good, but the idea that there are no marginal figures left in the political universe with very large followings who cook up these insane reasons not to preserve democracy, because if you're a Republican, you hate democracy, and if you're a brocialist, you think democracy is a sham that should be overthrown. And then the proletariats will rise up, and you'll have your revolution, and everything will work out fine.
I think you're right. I think that's a straw man. I think that's a very few and far between voter.
Yeah. They're loud.
Also, I don't mind having those folks in our tent, because anyone who wants to hold Biden accountable once this election is over, I'm all for that, and I'm not going to be easy on Biden once he's elected, because we do need to move left. We need to be partisan. We need to get the Senate, hold the Senate.
Partisan is not a dirty word. Partisan
no, and we're going to talk about that too. I want to get to that.
Mention one more thing about John McCain. John McCain, in 2000, went down to Liberty University and called Jerry Falwell everything but a child of God, and he lost. And John McCain, who knows how Republicans are, in 2008 went down to Liberty University to kiss Jerry Falwell's ass. I'm just saying, John McCain understood the Republican Party as it was, as it is, as it always shall be. And, the people who didn't desert the GOP when Jerry Falwell was their standard bearer are not going to desert the GOP now that Jerry Falwell unzipped drawers next to a young lady on a yacht drinking wine, now that his daddy's gone to hell and he's taken over the business. These people are, I'm not kidding when I say they are reprogrammable. You just tell them.
And let's talk for a minute about suing the NRA.
Okay.
And the reaction from right-wingers on that.
Sure.
Which is, what about the Clinton Foundation?
Right. It's always what about something. Yeah. No, there's a part of the software in the Republican brain that knows immediately to what about something the minute they're attacked.
What about Planned Parenthood?
Sure.
And that would be fair then. If we shut down Planned Parenthood and the NRA. Yeah, because everything is not about a crime, even a crime committed against you, meaning the people that are speaking about the NRA and Planned Parenthood. people in the NRA stole from NRA donors. That's what happened. A crime was committed against pro-NRA people.
Right.
They stole from you.
Right.
And the answer is, yeah, but that's our team.
Right.
And I don't care if somebody on our team steals from me.
Well, and this is also why I have said, since I started debating people back in the 90s over this shit, that both-siderism is the greater sin.
Yeah.
Because Republicans can only argue their stupid, racist, shitty, anti-science philosophy so far. Eventually, it just blows up in their face. And because they're not morally or intellectually capable of addressing the error and fixing it because they are the problem. They have a little piece of software in their head that says, go to whataboutism.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides do it. Both sides are bad. I'm not a bad person because liberals are just as bad or worse. And the examples they cite are, of course, equally bullshit to their original argument. But it doesn't matter to them. They don't care about any of this stuff at all.
Yeah.
They care about not being wrong. And
winning a point.
Right.
Yes, winning a point. Yeah.
And liberals being just as bad mean they're not morally inferior to liberals. And let me tell you, conservatives are morally inferior to liberals in every imaginable way. They are failures as people and as citizens and as children of God.
I'm going to get you off of off of that for a moment,
all right?
Because I want to talk about briefly Thailand and Yosemite, which, as I said on Twitter, that's how he greets Jared.
Right.
And I want to say something in Donald Trump's defense about the Thailand thing. Both of these mispronunciations are a total failure to have a competent staff.
Right.
And I know that Nicole Wallace, when she worked for George W. Bush, would spell things out phonetically in speeches.
You mean Nuclear George?
Nuclear. She would type things out, or whoever was doing his speeches on the teleprompter would make sure. And if you are a good staffer for a boss who, regardless, we're all human, you're there with lights and cameras, and you're on stage, and there's nerves, and you're pronouncing other countries' words you don't use every day. And so anything you can do to write things out phonetically so that you're guarding against any possibility of mispronunciation, because you know that's going to be the thing that goes viral.
Right.
Staff do this for bosses that give speeches. They do it. And Donald Trump has no staff. He has no competency. He doesn't rehearse what he says. And when he does rehearse it, or when he does have a written thing, he goes off course. And if he had had a competent staff, they would have written out Yosemite, M-I-T-T-Y.
Right.
They would have written out Thailand, T-A-Y, or T-I-E, land. You know, they would have made sure, regardless of where he was in the speech, that he said things correctly.
Look down at that red monstrosity around your neck. Thailand.
Thailand, yes.
Now,
Donald Trump corrected himself. He corrected himself when he said Thailand. Immediately, he said Thailand. Within one sentence, he corrected himself. Dinesh D'Souza jumps on Twitter and, over the course of an afternoon, continually defends the use of the term Thailand.
Well, he would, wouldn't he?
What happens when your God can never be wrong and then corrects himself?
Well, there is a self-correcting mechanism in the brain of the conservatives who simply do not recognize conflict, or it's Orwellian. You know, that we've always been at war with East Asia.
Yeah.
And you just double think, you just go along with it. If you are a conservative, you are still a Republican, if you still have an R after your name, you have spent literally decades training yourself to ignore the shit you said yesterday and pretending it didn't happen, or pretending it doesn't matter, or pretending, oh, look over there, there's something even worse that some liberal did. And so at this point, I've said this before, and I don't mean to be cruel, but we are arguing with a different species of humanity. I mean, they're just fucking wired different at this point. And this is where liberals are constantly fucking up. And even, this is where the never-Trumpers are just incredulous that people behave this way, even though they trained them to behave this way. They can't believe that these people actually believe, and look at Donald Trump grunting about God and guns would actually fall for this shit. Like, fuck you. You rewired their brains through Fox News and hate radio to exactly this level of stupidity. This is the plan. You plan to build an army of morons who would vote for anything you wanted. You got it. And a con man came in and said, all I have to do is tell these mopes out loud what you people will only tell them behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if I repeat everything that I hear on Fox News, they'll say, he's saying what I'm thinking.
Right.
Yep.
But what about the indignity and the outrage? Oh, no. Those are liberal things. Those are, you can do anyone who says that you're wrong or that you're bad or that you're racist, you can ignore those people. They're all liberals. That's all fake news. You Bill Kristol, you, David Brooks, you, Rick Wilson, train these people to think this way. You train them to automatically go to both sides, do it every time their default setting when they fuck up. So what? Well,
and so this dovetails very nicely into one of the main themes of today's show.
Yes,
which is the crazy right and the socialist left.
That's right. That's right. The center.
Both sides. And we really need a center party, Driftglass.
We do. We need a centrist party so bad. And, this is the last 2 pages of Stuart Stevens' book, right? 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, it is. He says this in it. We got his book.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair to him, and I think you have been.
Yes.
He does say it was all a lie. He does say that Republicans have no morals, or they have no creed that they will be loyal to. They don't care about deficits. They don't care about national defense. They care about power, and they care about winning. And it was anything that you hear about conservative principles was all a lie. And he's much more honest than many, many people on the right about that.
Which makes, as I said before, for I'm sure some very interesting staff meetings at the Lincoln Lads Project.
So, to be fair, he says all of that. And then we get to the penultimate page of his book, where he says, with the Democratic Party moving ever more dangerously left.
Oh, there we go. Save the good stuff for the last page there, Stuart. Yeah.
It's essential that we get back to a center-right party that believes in the conservative principles that I have always believed are true. Right. Okay.
A conservative party that believes in something, in anything. Now, here's the thing. We crazy lefties all do believe in universal health care, and we believe in universal free adult education, and we believe in a minimum wage that is a living wage, and we believe in the dignity of labor, and we believe in protecting the environment, and we believe in sexual equality for everyone, LGBTQ, etc. We believe in civil rights. We believe in voting. We have a long list of things we believe in, none of which are crazy liberal lefty ideas. They have been turned into that by people like Stuart Stevens because they needed someone to hate. And so going back to fucking Reagan and before that, the idea of Medicare was socialism that will destroy America. And they've been locked into that for 50 years. And so the idea that, what we really need in this country is a center-right party to balance off the crazy left.
This is the lifeboat that they're all building now. Is centrism, the HMS centrism. Yeah.
And it is all of them. It is all of them.
It is all of them.
This is the lifeboat for the people who are terrified of cancel culture, who are afraid that for what you and I would consider our 6-month performance evaluation, people like Andrew Sullivan and David Brooks consider, the jackboot of fascism on their throat, and who write in the sense of moral indignation that anyone ever holds them accountable for anything, because they're above that. They're men of ideas, and holding people of ideas accountable for shit is against the rules. But all of them, and I've read all of them. I read all of them currently. I read Andrew Sullivan today. Andrew Sullivan does not believe in burning the Republican Party down. He believes in holding it intact and changing its leadership, because and we'll get to the problem of the Republican voter in a second, but his belief is that, sure, but we need a right party that believes in the environment and believes in gay rights and believes, wait a minute, you're describing the Democratic platform. And this goes back to the way Andrew Sullivan's always been. Andrew Sullivan is a fucking liberal, But Andrew Sullivan cannot be a gay liberal because then he's one of a million gay liberals out there.
No one will pay attention to him.
Pay attention. So he has to be the Tory Catholic conservative, gay, libertarian, pot smoking, whatever, who's just a professional eccentric, a professional contrarian asshole. So whatever position you take, he's going to take the opposite position and tell you why you're wrong. And that's just worn very thin in the shadow of the actual fascism that Republicans are casting over this country. So he really does believe, but we need a center right party to balance out the crazy liberal left thing, all of which he believes in. And the only distinction he makes is cultural conservatism has to be part of it. But he doesn't mean cultural wars. No. He means loving your country. Because, of course, Democrats don't love their country, which is why we fight for it so hard. And it is this desperate need to remain employed. I need to keep getting paid for having opinions that are objectively shitty. So what I will do is what I've been doing for the last 15, 20 years, which is carve out this imaginary center between the crazy left and the loony right. And that's where reasonable people will meet. And that's where you'll find every single one of these people. If I can just read one more thing.
Sure.
This is from a back and forth on the Bulwark podcast that actually touches on an article from the New Republic that we're going to mention in greater depth, I believe. But this is Rick Wilson and Charlie Sykes talking about an article in the New Republic critiquing a book on Never-Trumpers.
Okay.
And here's something I don't think you've seen. The New Republic has a review of the new book about Never-Trumpers. They assigned a very left Yale professor who hates Never-Trumpers. And here's his conclusion. And here's what the writer actually wrote. That while the people who wrote this book are right, the Never-Trumper phenomenon will have lasting effects. Those effects are not the ones they propose. The significance, I'm just going to summarize him now, is not that they're going to change the Republican Party in any way, but that they're going to change the Democratic Party. It turns out to be that within the Democratic Party, whose members have chosen to convert enemies into friends, their job is to set up a guardrail against the capture of the party by the left. The legacy of Never-Trumpers so far is stopping progress rather than saving democracy. And it's very clear. These people are trying to get into the Democratic Party to stop us from being liberals. Because their party is shit. Their party is uninhabitable by them. They need a place being essentially parasitic. They need a place to nest. And so they're going to come in and try to take over the Democratic Party by making it a center-right party, which it kind of already is. And Charlie Sykes reads this and says, now my reaction to that is basically, he's saying that like it's a bad thing. It's like, no, that's exactly right. We were warning the Democrats. Then Rick Wilson chimes in with, he's happy that this is true. Yes, of course it's true. The goal of them is not to rehabilitate the Republican Party. Their goal is to get inside the Democratic Party long enough to gum up the works and keep the Democratic Party from moving, all in the name of centrism. And that's the problem. It's the same goddamn problem that we faced under Obama. It's the same goddamn problem we faced under Bush and even under Clinton. No matter what Democrats do, no matter how consistently they compromise, Barack Obama was 8 years of compromise, 8 years of sane, sensible, thoughtful, et cetera, leadership that reached out to the Republican Party at every step. And it was 8 years of obstruction and slander and racism, and the Republican Party elected the king of the birthers. So it was an example. It was a template in excellent leadership if you want to have someone who does compromise in a thoughtful, sane way. I happen to disagree massively with that approach because I believe, and I believe it's been borne out by facts, the Republican Party was unsalvageable back then. There was no hope for it then, and attempting to compromise with it was a complete fucking waste of time. But that's water under the bridge. And yet Andrew Sullivan continues to believe that the Republican Party can be saved by leadership. No, the Republican Party was shown an example of leadership for 8 years, and they told him to fuck off. And then they elected the king of the birthers. Donald Trump didn't win in the Republican Party because of the sheer force of his personality. He won in the Republican Party because he told a party of bigots and imbeciles the lies they wanted to believe. That's why he won. That's how he led them. That's how he continues to lead them. So this fantasy that you're going to lead these morons into a more enlightened state where they're not going to be the same people they've been for the last 30 years is ridiculous. And it is the shoals on which every critique from the right crashes except for Stuart Stevens, who's willing to say, yeah, the party's a fucking mess and needs to be burned to the ground. Except, of course.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, too, that every candidate in the Republican Party on the debate stage in 2016 wanted to take away my health insurance.
Yep. They all put their hands right up.
It's not just Trump. And what set Trump apart was he ran against Bush.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who ran against George W. Bush and ran against Jeb Bush and said, no, George W. Bush didn't keep us safe, and allowed an out for shamed Republicans who were ashamed that Bush had lied to them and had been a loser. And they had to they had to create the Tea Party to reinvent themselves, to forget that they'd ever supported George W. Bush. And Trump gave them an out. Yeah, he's my guy.
Yeah.
Because he tells the truth. He knows that George W. Bush didn't keep us safe.
Well, he ran against George W. Bush and Mexicans.
Yeah, and Mexicans. There you go. And compassionate conservatism. Right. He was willing to punch liberals and punch hippies, and he still is. I want to congratulate Cori Bush for winning her primary in Missouri. African-American woman activist. And this is the other thing that's going to be a big problem for the Republican Party. How to not appear racist and sexist when 130 black women are running for Congress.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
And yes, 32 of those are Republicans. 98 are Democrats. 75 Latinas are running as major party congressional candidates. 41 Asian or Pacific Islander women are running for Congress. 16 Middle Eastern or North African women are running for Congress. And they're all doing that because 5 or 6 women in the squad came forward.
Showed them the way.
And showed them how to do this.
Yep.
And just a quick note, I'm not going to read this, but I would like to recommend that everyone Google the words, "We Have Her Back." A group of women from the National Women's Law Center, NARAL, Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, Supermajority, that's Cecile Richards' group, Time's Up, have come out before Joe Biden announces which woman will be his running mate. And they have done an open letter to news division heads, editors-in-chiefs, etc., to say, we are watching you. And if you decide to cover the woman running with Joe Biden and talk about whether she is liked or not, talk about her hair, weight, tone of voice, attractiveness, talk about her electability,
her ambition,
doubt whether she can be a qualified leader, or talk about her heritage in a way that questions whether she is legitimately American. Those kind of racist and sexist ways of covering a race are over. And we are watching, and we're going to call you out, and we will blame the media for this. And these are some pretty powerful voices with large mailing lists.
Well, and this is part about calling out the media. That is so important. That is so important. That's the lens through which all of this shit is filtered. And you really have to refocus that lens, or it's never going to change. Yeah.
So what is right? I mean, if you want to talk about Donald Trump's hair and makeup at the same time, or his tone, whether he's legitimate or not, we could go on that all day, both sides. And then I wanted to recommend a book review article called "Save the Party, Save the World" by Joseph O'Neill. It is in the August 20th, 2020 New York Review of Books, which is online. This article is online.
And just so you know, our home life is my wife reading me the New York Review of Books in bed.
Political coverage is really good.
Yeah, no, just sitting in bed, having my wife reading me the New York Review of Books. I have the best life imaginable, just so you know.
And this is an essay, but it's a review of 2 books, one by E.J. Dionne Jr. called Code Red, How Progressives and Moderates Can Unite to Save Our Country, and by Eitan Hirsch, Politics is for Power, How to Move Beyond Political Hobbyism, Take Action, and Make Real Change. And I have a big beef with Eitan Hirsch's argument. He is saying that there's too much political hobbyism on the left, which includes listening to podcasts. No, seriously. What he wanted to do in Massachusetts was do some really hardcore canvassing. And the Democratic Party in Brookline, Massachusetts said, no, we just want to win political races, and we're going to do our canvassing during elections. Mm-hmm. But the kind of political action that he sees as legitimate is very hard for mothers to do. Mm-hmm. And he is ignoring a lot of the activism that goes on online with women that works. And you see that in Black Lives Matter. You see that in the Women's March.
The Women's March. Women's March, which you might remember was dismissed out of hand as frivolous and a waste of time by New York Times op-ed columnist David Brooks.
Right. And so a lot of what is seen as political hobbyism, and yes, sitting down and watching Rachel Maddow with a big glass of wine, listening to The Professional Left every Friday night should not be the end of your political activity. No. I am not recommending that.
Now, it should be part of your political activity. But it should be
part of your political life. Right. Yes, those things matter. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Political hobbyism, if you're just watching and not doing anything, you need to do postcards to voters. You need to be active and so forth. But again, I think Eitan Hersh is ignoring women's activism or is diminishing women's activism because mothers do it differently. And people with children at home do not go and start knocking door to door and spending 8 hours a day doing that because they can't. But the end of this essay, and this essay, again, is written by Joseph O'Neill. And he's talking about how the importance of partisanship for Democrats. And I really love his recommendations because, as we have been talking about, the idea of retreating to, both sides, centrism, let's bring the country together and compromise some more with our friends on the other side of the aisle is not going to work with a planet that is catching fire.
No. Nope.
We simply can't afford to do that anymore. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of this ending of this article and what his recommendations are. Number one, embrace the principle of dignity as a central partisan theme, meaning the dignity of every worker, the dignity of every gender, the dignity of every sexual orientation, etc. Mm-hmm. Second, appoint figures trusted by the left to senior positions in the Biden administration and in the party organization. The progressive younger wing of the party is almost completely without representation in the congressional and Democratic National Committee leaderships. That is a scandal. Totally agree with that. Third, the Biden administration and its allies in Congress must take the strongest legislative and executive action possible to do what Democrats, younger ones in particular, want them to do. A Green New Deal with a substantial jobs component will be crucial. Taxing the rich a lot more will be essential, as will a historic leap forward in healthcare. It is time to do stuff that Democrats like.
Yeah.
And I would add without apology. And that will create partisan loyalty. And this is what FDR did. People were grateful to him for the extra money and for the electricity in their homes, etc.
And he made no bones about the fact that Republicans hated him.
Hatred.
I welcome their hatred. Like, no, these fuckers are standing in our way. And now that we have an overwhelming majority, we're just going to push them aside because they're the people who caused this problem and we are going to fix it.
Fourth, substantiate the narrative of dignity by reforming the police and ICE, fixing voter suppression, and fast-tracking immigration reform. Such measures are supported by the majority of Americans and are urgently awaited by party loyalists of color. Again, he's saying make Democrats happy. That is essential. Fifth, enact reforms that will correct the dangerous electoral advantages enjoyed by the GOP. Statehood for D.C. is a no-brainer, as is restoring the reach of the Voting Rights Act. Scrap the Senate filibuster rule if need be. Criminalize intentional voter disenfranchisement. Make people go to jail for that. I absolutely agree.
Yep.
Expand the Supreme Court as necessary. And sixth, I've said this before, start thinking about the 2022 midterms on day one.
Mm-hmm.
We have 15 months with a Biden presidency to get anything done.
Well, I'm just saying that the way they handle sex offenders is you have to go around your neighborhood telling people that a known sex offender, who you are, has moved into the neighborhood. I think if you're a civil rights offender, you should have to go around the neighborhood, tell people, hi, I'm your new neighbor, and I tried really hard to make sure you couldn't vote. And you got to go to every house on your fucking block in a 3-block radius, explain. And if they're not home, you got to leave a note saying, hi, my name's Driftglass, and I worked really hard to take away your right to vote. And
Chris Kobach.
You have to wear that. This is the thing. These people cannot be allowed to escape the judgment of history one more time.
Right.
Cannot. And so we have to find a scarlet letter bright enough and permanent enough to affix to them so that people know 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, oh, you were the assholes who elected Trump, right?
Well, let me finish this because it's right along the lines of what you're saying. Democrats must internally rebrand their party as the party of grassroots organizers. That entails more than a PR campaign. It will require funding, empowering, and privileging grassroots organizations and putting the DNC apparatus at their disposal.
Right.
Primary challenges should not be discouraged. Factional disputes should be viewed as good faith differences of opinion unless they undermine the shared partisan purpose and the mutual respect that an ethos of dignity requires. Okay. Finally, stoke negative partisanship. Americans, whether they're swing voters or party activists, must go to the polls in 2022 and 2024 with a strong and valid fear of letting the GOP back into power.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, always be negatively branding the GOP in the eyes of swing or persuadable voters. Exactly what approach to take in the branding operation is a complex question, but suffice it to say that it must be undertaken and that the master narrative is the Republican Party can no longer be trusted with power.
Absolutely.
Repeat this at every opportunity. Then verify this narrative by investigating and bringing to light all Republican misdeeds. Brand them as Republican Party misdeeds, not as aberrant Trumpist corruption. So don't you dare call it Trumpism. It is the Republican Party.
I've heard that before somewhere. Yeah.
I think that as we see these viral videos of people not wearing masks, of people being violent, of people using the N-word, of people screaming, etc., branding that, well, that's a typical Republican.
Yep.
That's a typical Republican right there. And make sure that on social media you say, oh, look, it's another typical Republican saying what they really think.
And that's where political hobbyism comes in handy. Because
right, it really does. Whatever. I don't call it that. I hate to call it that.
But you can get on Facebook, and this is, I find these threads in my civilian life all over the place locally about, oh my God, can you believe these idiots and those idiots and these assholes? And can you believe that they're suing to make sure people don't wear masks in school? And what the hell is wrong with these people? And the answer is they're Republicans. They're Republicans. Just repeat it. This is one lesson. I'm going back to 1994 in my mind when I was begging my liberal friends, for God's sakes, learn a lesson from Newt Gingrich. Mm-hmm. He's an evil, evil pig human. He's just a monster. But learn from him that you get a fixed vocabulary, a short, clearly understood vocabulary for describing the other side, and you repeat the shit out of it. Mm-hmm. Every time you see them doing something, it's a Republican. It's not a Trumpist. It's not an independent. It's not Congress.
It's not MAGA.
It's not Congress. Right. It's Republicans. And you just go over and over and make yourself a nuisance. Oh, it's that Republican guy. Yeah, well, aren't they Republicans? Well, yeah, I suppose so. And make them eat it. They made this sandwich. They smeared shit all over it. Shove it down their throat every opportunity you get. These Republicans doing what Republicans have always done. Do not let them call themselves independents. Do not let them pretend they didn't vote for this shit. Don't let them escape this time, because you'll pay for it tenfold the next time they regroup and come back with President Tom Cotton.
Right. So speaking of Republican voters.
Yes.
You want to talk about Damon Linker.
Yes. I had a wonderful article in The Week. This is the thing that there's a raging argument among the elite white male conservative people that I listen to as one listens to enemy broadcasts about whether the Republican Party should be burned to the ground or whether the Republican Party is salvageable, can be taken intact and reformed through something. You know where I stand.
Right.
But the one thing that none of them talk about, because they don't dare talk about it, is what we've talked about many, many times on this podcast, which is the Republican voters are the problem. This is toxic real estate, and somebody's going to build something on this toxic real estate because it's just too big and too valuable to ignore. So what they're going to build there is going to be horrible. And Damon Linker, for bless his heart, actually goes directly at the problem in an article entitled "The Republican Problem No One Knows How to Solve." And he goes on, in the raging debate among Trump-critical conservatives over whether the goal in November should be merely to defeat the president or to pursue a more radical strategy of burning the Republican Party to the ground, I'm firmly on the side of scorched earth. And the case for maximalism is strong. He goes on to all the reasons why the Republican Party should be disposed of. So yes, it would be a very good for the Republican Party of Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, Lindsey Graham, Louis Gohmert, Devin Nunes, and all the rest of them to be leveled to the ground so a wholly new party, a more reasonable, responsible, principled, and honorable party can be built in its place. There's just one difficulty with this plan. It does nothing to address the root of the problem, which no one, not even the minimalist Trump haters and not the fiercest maximalist out to pummel the party's establishment, has a clue how to solve. That is the problem of the Republican voter. Every one of those politicians, from Trump on down to Gohmert and Nunes and beyond, was elected by these voters. In the midst of a pandemic that's killed 160,000 Americans in under 6 months, and that the president shows no sign of understanding how to combat, his approval rating among Republicans is at 91%. Thanks to this unshakable support, his overall approval has barely dipped below 40% through the nightmares of the recent month and is currently creeping back up towards his norm of the past year, around 42%. That may, God willing, be low enough for Trump to lose his bid for re-election to presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. But the loss, if it happens, will come despite his continued support from the overwhelming majority of Republicans, not because they, with a handful of well-publicized exceptions, have abandoned him. That is the problem. What to do with these toxic waste dump human beings who are going to linger in our political environment for decades. And it's a problem that we can solve, I think, only by identifying it as a problem. You have to start saying, Republicans, the Republicans you know, the Republicans in your family, the Republicans you work with, the Republican business owners they are the problem. You have to start treating them as disease carriers, people you want to stay away from, people you want to keep your friends away from. You have to make them know that they are a blight on your community. Maybe they'll reform, maybe they won't, but pretending they don't exist, pretending that they're just normal folks going through a normal day and you and they don't have, that much difference in opinion is bullshit. They have a radical, ugly, racist vision for this country that they are absolutely committed to, and you don't. And that vision is what created Donald Trump. And you need to hold them personally in your community accountable for the horrible shit they've said and done, and not let them skate, not let them burn their Trump yard signs and become another Tea Party and pretend they never had anything to do with this. You can't allow that to happen. And that can only mean point a finger and say, no, fucker, you're the problem. You did this. You're the bad guy. And don't let them pretend otherwise. Don't let them both sides their way out of it. Don't let them, but liberals their way out of it. Don't let them look over there. There's something else. Don't let them change the subject to, titties and sports. Don't let them do any of that shit. And it might not work, but I can't think of a better solution, any solution that doesn't begin with identifying the problem for what it is. And the problem is from the top of the party down through its communication apparatus on hate radio and on television, down to the grassroots, it's all rotten and all has to go.
You had something you wanted to say about Ray Bradbury's Night Call Collect.
I just pulled up an old post I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's a short story by Ray Bradbury about a man stranded on Mars and has been there for decades and thought he has been left behind. He's become an old man on Mars. And during his time on Mars, he spent a lot of his time automating the city that he lives in, automating the phone system, automating the jukeboxes, automating the restaurants. So it appears to be alive. because he can't stand the idea of being lonely. The problem is he automated the entire system based on his younger, crueler, more vicious, more idiotic, more heartless self. So now he's an old man. And the city which he created as a young man turns on him.
Ooh.
And starts telling him, you know what? There's a rescue ship coming on the other side of Mars. You have to get there in a hurry. Got to hurry up. Now, the city knows he has a bad heart. The city knows that it might kill him. Doesn't care. And this guy, are you sure? Oh, yeah. I know it's been a long, lonely, many, many decades up here on Mars, but the rescue ship has finally arrived. But you got to get there quick. Got to get there in a hurry. And he has to throw everything together and haul ass across Mars to get to the rescue ship. I'm not sure, but I believe the ending is he drops dead of a heart attack, but I don't remember if that's the actual ending. The point being, the never-Trumpers, the Republican Party, are being tortured by the younger, crueler version of themselves. This is not something someone else did to them. This is not something some outside force imposed on them. This is the party that their sadistic, younger, asshole selves put together giddily, happily, money pouring in from all sides doing it because it's very profitable to create this.
1994.
Yep. And now that city, that machine they put in motion has turned on them. And they don't want to take responsibility for the fact that the voice coming out of the voice box telling them, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Just run like hell and risk your life. That voice is their own goddamn voice coming to them across the decades.
What you got to do is suppress the black vote. You got to do it.
Got to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought a little science fiction might be in order because I haven't touched on that in a long time.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's do a news roundup.
Cool. After you, my dear.
All right. Trump has declared TikTok a national emergency and signed an executive order barring transactions with its parent company. Is that federal government transactions? How is he going to do this?
Who knows? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Transactions with its parent company starting in 45 days. Yeah. And I wonder if this isn't, the Manchurian Candidate thing of Heinz 57. Yeah. There are 57 there are 57 communists in the military because 45, he's president 45. So that 40, we'll do it in 45 days.
Yeah.
It seems like a very random number.
Well, very much like the random number of weeks until our brand new healthcare system shows up.
2 weeks, right, which was 3 weeks ago. And then it was also 171 weeks ago that he said we were going to have a great healthcare plan in 2 weeks.
Don't remember stuff, honey. It'll just cause
and
you
then,
pain.
Well, and people did note on Twitter the anniversary of that in 2 weeks this time. They did, 2 weeks ago, and today he's golfing and has no plan and no executive order. And so I went and found those tweets and said, yeah, that was a week ago. Why aren't you asking him this? The thing is, part of me, this goes back to take Trump seriously or not, or take him too seriously or not seriously enough. Do I really want Donald Trump to write an executive order on my health care? No, I don't. No. I don't want to hold him that accountable to the point where he goes, fine, I'm just going to cancel all health care.
Well, I think you called my attention to the Onion headline summarizing Jonathan Swan's interview. DC journalists in awe of Australian reporter able to speak to Trump without succumbing to his raw animal magnetism.
Right.
This guy just sat...
The idea that Jonathan Swan gets all this praise for when Donald Trump says many people. Yeah. And he said, who? Who are you talking about? Who are the people that you're talking about? Many people. Who?
And there's a laundry list of prominent DC journalists who've had interviews with Trump who could have done exactly the same thing.
Right.
Prominent among which is Chuck Todd, who were cowards, who just didn't ask, hey, where's that healthcare program? Remember 152 weeks ago when you said you'd have a healthcare system?
You were going to have a great healthcare plan.
Whatever happened to that?
April of 2017, you said it was going to be 2 weeks.
Well, we're going to have it up in a short period of time. Well, what does that mean? Well, many people. Well, what people? And it is asking the most basic questions. When you say many people, ask which ones. When you say experts say which ones. When you say read the books, which books. These are not gotcha questions any more than asking Sarah Palin what she reads is a gotcha question. But apparently the word is out among the Beltway journalists that if you ask Donald Trump a follow-up question, we will spank you and take your show away from you or whatever. And that doesn't bode well for the future of journalism, which I think is pretty much already dead.
Or the future of democracy. And that's the problem, is you drive through that gate of the White House and it's a privilege to be there. And so your respect for the institution of the presidency and the institution of the Justice Department as well.
Yeah.
You don't question when the Attorney General says the Mueller report says X, Y, and Z.
When it doesn't. Absolutely
when
doesn't.
it doesn't.
Speaking of journalists who actually do a pretty good job, I just thought I'd mention this headline from Brother Charlie Pierce. They held a hearing so Ted Cruz could say Antifa a bunch of times on C-SPAN. And that's all that was.
That's what Sally Yates' hearing was about, too, was Lindsey Graham being tough on Sally Yates. And as you put in our notes, Sally Yates drank all of Lindsey Graham's milkshake.
Yeah, it was...
by being factual and making the simple making everything very simple. We didn't surveil the Trump campaign. No, we didn't do that.
It didn't happen. And this is why we could do a 5-hour news roundup every day of all the shit that happens. But it's really all you need to know is all Republicans are terrible people and they all need to go.
I hope people will come back and listen to us in spite of that.
Well, but it is every news roundup should just have a little asterisk. Oh, and this happened because all Republicans are terrible people and they all have to go. Yeah. This is the week that Donald Trump insisted the coronavirus pandemic will go away like things go away, which is almost a Johnny Cash lyric when he covered Hurt, but not quite. I get that. I don't think Trump knows that. My view is the schools should open. This thing is going away. This followed a coronavirus task force meeting in the Oval Office this week. A person familiar with the meeting said that Trump is still basically incapable of dealing with the severity of the pandemic. Quote, he still doesn't get it, the person said. I imagined him shaking his head and crying into his shorts. He still doesn't get it. Joe Biden, meanwhile, weighed in saying, Donald Trump continues to live in a world of delusion. Oh, my God. How unpresidential. Can't both sides stop being so reckless with their language?
Yeah. And remember in late July when Education Secretary Betsy DeVos claimed that the kids are the virus stoppers.
Yeah. That didn't happen. We mentioned Jonathan Swann's interview. He said that Donald Trump said that schools should reopen because children are virtually immune. However, Facebook disagreed, citing virus misinformation. It has deleted Donald Trump's post about the virtual immunity of children.
And Donald Trump claimed without evidence, he lied, that it was possible the U.S. could have a coronavirus vaccine before the election.
Yeah.
And medical experts think that is ridiculous.
Yes.
Sooner than the end of the year. Could be much sooner.
Yeah.
He told Geraldo Rivera. Oh. Yeah. Because there's another one we want to have interview Trump and say, and who exactly says that's going to happen?
Now this
when
is
asked sooner than November 3rd, Trump replied, I think in some cases, yes. Mm-hmm. Possible before, but right around that time, yes, I think so.
Yes.
Again, do you take him too seriously or what? Yeah, okay.
Now here's a heartwarming story.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It sort of is. Noted pervert and former NBC employee Mark Halperin is now working at Newsmax alongside Sean Spicer because of course he is. And
Driftglass, I went and looked that up. He has his own show now on Newsmax. Halperin on Sundays.
Oh.
It's called Mark Halperin's Focus Group.
Oh, no,
and it's on Zoom, and it's a show.
No, that's the wrong title. It should be titled, That's Going to Leave a Mark with Mark Halperin.
Trump will reimpose 10% tariffs on aluminum imports from Canada for no reason other than Canada is making him look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Who said that living in Canada is now like living in the apartment above a meth lab? That was a good one. Yeah,
that was a good one. I just want to point out that the one advantage of Mark Halperin on Zoom is that he can now do everything with no pants on. So that's making him, he's a happy guy.
Disgusting. Okay.
Yeah. The State Department's acting inspector general has resigned less than 3 months after replacing the inspector general Donald Trump fired in May.
He must have seen the state of the office.
Yeah, just turned right around. Just
I can't.
Didn't hang one.
Yeah.
Not one picture on the wall, not one trophy on the shelf. Just boom, out the door. Mm-hmm.
The Trump campaign is suing the state of Nevada over its plan. Now, here's the point where you take Trump seriously.
Right, exactly.
The Trump campaign is suing the state of Nevada over its plan to send absentee ballots to all active voters this November, falsely claiming that expanding mail-in voting would make voter fraud inevitable. At the same time, the Trump campaign is strongly encouraging voters in Florida to vote by mail after months of criticizing the practice.
Yeah.
I assume he's gotten an assurance from the governor that Broward County ballots will go into the ocean.
Yeah. Donald Trump claimed he has the authority to issue an executive order addressing mail-in voting in the November election, despite the Constitution expressly giving states the right to run their own elections.
And that's why that Nevada case should just be kicked right out.
Yep.
And this week, Trump blew off John Lewis's historic civil rights legacy and didn't go to the funeral and complained how the recently deceased civil rights icon made a big mistake by not coming to his inauguration.
Yeah.
Somebody should tell Trump, well, yeah, but your inauguration was so crowded.
Right. There was no...
There were just too many people there. John Lewis couldn't get in, remember?
Too many. He was there. Don't you remember? He sat right behind you.
He sat right behind you.
Yeah,
he was there.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people were there.
All the people were there.
Harriet Tubman was there.
Everyone was there. Okay. Mm-hmm. In local news, our Republican Congressman Rodney Davis has COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that.
Me too.
And I wish him a speedy recovery. He actually has symptoms.
Yes, he does.
And so this is not good. And I am sorry that he has it.
Mm-hmm.
I am also sorry that he voted multiple times to take away my health insurance.
I'm even sorrier about that last one. Yeah.
And I'm really sorry that he didn't lose last time the election came around, and I hope he loses in November.
A lawsuit challenging school mask requirements was tossed out in Adams County, Illinois. Thank God.
A pajamas ban for students learning from home has drawn a mixed response. Was that a headline in the local paper?
It really was. It really, really was. Actually, no, that is, believe it or not, that is from NBC National News.
Oh, God.
Story...
This is the thing that Middle Child flipped out about yesterday, which is the claim by that school supervisor in Georgia who said, well, you can't force kids to wear a mask.
Sure.
And this is a school district, like many, many, many school districts, that sends girls home if they wear spaghetti straps or leggings to school.
They have what's called a dress code.
Yeah. And they will measure, they will use a 3x5 index card to measure the length of a skirt.
Huh?
If it is 5 inches above the knee, it's too short.
Got to go home.
And they use that 5-inch, they hold that 5-inch index card on a girl's knee. They pull her out in the hallway and put an index card on her knee. And if her skirt rides higher than that index card, they send her home.
Mm-hmm.
And this, she, Middle Child had all kinds of swear words about, we can't possibly require students to wear a mask during a pandemic.
No.
Yeah.
But this is the flip side of that. This is whether they're taking classes online or in person. Public school students in Springfield, Illinois now must follow the dress code of the building, and so no pajama pants, which means
prove it. Prove I'm wearing pajama pants.
Yeah, well, there's the thing. It's like
I'm not wearing any pants.
Why,
what do you mean?
Why pick this fight? Why are you picking this fight? Because
we have to have some modicum of control in our minds over our students.
And
that's why.
I'm fairly convinced. I can't speak for you, but I'm fairly convinced that schools are going to start here on August 31st. And
they're doing a hybrid thing where some classes are going to be in person and some, and it's going to last a week.
It's going to last a week, maybe
one
two.
Kid that tests positive, and that's it.
And
one kid's going to show up with a 5-degree fever, and that's it.
And they're going to test them, and it's going to be COVID, and they're going to shut all the schools down. Because you have teachers that do move from school to school, and you have administrators that move
insane.
around.
You have teachers that push a cart all over the school because there's not enough classroom space, and these classrooms have 35 kids in them. So screw it.
And all the people who've said now, because the schools are only open by a very narrow vote of the school board.
Right.
There were a whole bunch of medical experts who said, "Are you kidding me? This is stupid. This is crazy," and they weren't listened to. What people who were listened to were the parents who, understandably, would like the schools to take their kids off their hands so they can be healthy and learn with their friends, which is all everyone wants that.
Everyone wants that, but it's a question of can we do it?
And parents can go back to work, so they don't have to provide home daycare, which is an adult, which is a parent, which I completely understand. The problem is, again, this sort of short-term thinking. Great. Everyone wants that. What you are doing now virtually guarantees that a couple of weeks from now, we're going to have to undo the whole thing and start all over again. Is that what you want? And as a grown-up, don't you have a responsibility to face that reality? And the answer is, I don't want to. I don't want to face that reality.
I'm a Republican. I don't want to.
It makes me very uncomfortable. I want just kids to go. And so fine. They'll go, and then some will get sick, and they'll shut the thing down, and the rest of us will say, we told you so. And then David Brooks will write a column about the uncivility of the left, and we'll all be back to where we started. And then come November, we're going to have an election, and by God, we're going to see this. Then things will change. But between now and then, it's you and me and all of our listeners just hang on to each other, hold each other virtually.
And I was comforted once again by the Michelle Obama podcast and her saying low-grade depression.
Yeah.
And everybody saying, low-grade? Really?
Yeah. Well, she has certain resources that some of the rest of us don't.
She does. Yes.
But
she's
still,
got her book sales, but...
She's a human being, and she's reacting like a human being. Oh.
And she's watching the news, and she's getting depressed, and aren't we all? Yes. Each week, we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. But this week's extra special, this week's Internet Kitty is a horse.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. One of our listeners has a horse named Kamasa. Kamasa is sticking out a tongue in this picture, but not in disdain. And, of course, Kamasa eats freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve feed store perfection or dollar store dreck, your horse will trot around the paddock while you serve up some freshly poured horse food. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured.
I feel I really should do my Sam Elliott impersonation for a horse.
Let's save it.
We'll save it for next week.
Kamasa appreciates that, and you can visit Kamasa at our Facebook page or website. A very special horse indeed. And you can send your Internet Kitty or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, postal unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Hashtag save the post office. We got a package from Bart, and Bart sent us a package with some coffee and some honey and cookies and a whole bunch of good stuff, including some cat treats. Mm-hmm. And Bart wrote us and said, I thought I'd include the cat treats for your kitties so my kitties don't get too fat.
Thanks, Bart. Thank you so much, Bart.
Listen, we believe in this house that a fat cat is a happy cat.
Well, we should let people know that Junior Dude has taken to walking our older cat in the backyard.
The older cat. He walks him around the backyard.
Has become an absolute unbearable asshole.
Yeah.
The reason this podcast has been interrupted a few times is we had to take that cat upstairs and lock it in a bedroom because he now just sits in the window or at the door all day long, goes, meow, meow, meow.
Yeah, I want to go out. I want to go out. Why can't I go out?
I'm like, what happened to you? And he tasted the sweet, sweet smell.
He tasted the sweet victory of the outdoors. And we've had really beautiful weather here.
Yeah. And the backyard is...
something I didn't expect to have this summer. We tend to go from winter to 90 degrees and not have a lot of days of cool 70-degree weather. But we've eaten outside on the back porch lunch.
We got a nature show
every day this week.
You kidding
me?
Me?
Oh my gosh, we had a nature show. We had a hawk. Anyway, we live in the country, folks.
Yeah, this is the Cornfield Resistance. It truly is.
It really is. So hashtag save the post office. We love hearing from you, and we wanted to thank Bart very much for that box of goodies. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job and a labor of love. Approximately 1% of our listeners do support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. Our PayPal and postal address information is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media, and thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Bluegal, the Internet Kitties like the sound of Thailand a lot. Delicious, delicious chicken thighs.
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2019-2020, DGBG Productions.